Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to our session today. I'm Carol, here from the marketing department at Sunset Learning Institute. Today, our instructor is Russell. Russ, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure. I'm going to say a very brief bio about Russ. Russ has over than 25 years of networking experience, and he's one of our Sunset Learning head CCNA instructors. Actually, he's been with us for more than 27 years, so we are the specialists today. And also, Russ he currently teaches CCNA and CCNP level courses. He has expertise in content network, IPv6, BGP, and data center areas. So you all enjoy the session and enjoy Russ' knowledge. I will be here helping you at the chat. You can send your messages, your questions through the chat or here in the button of Q&A.
So what you're going to really see here is that Cisco has made a few changes to the CCNA, but not very many. Okay. So I would tell you, in my opinion, I'm kind of amazed that they made it a new version, to tell you the truth. Okay. So let's see. I think we're good with that poll, right, Carol? Okay.
Yes, we are. All yours.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good
Yep,
session.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Carol. Thanks for the pleasant introduction. So again, kind of going through and talking about what it is we're going to deal with in the CCNA, kind of going through my agenda here, you're going to see, I'm going to talk about recertification. What does it mean for those already certified? What do you get for continuing education? Is the digital learning changing whatsoever? And then some of the technical changes to the CCNA that we've got available for us here. So as far as those of you guys that are already certified for the CCNA, doesn't change your certification one bit. Okay. So just to let you guys know, there's no reason for you guys to have to recertify. Now, obviously in 3 years, right, you're going to have to go through and recertify, or at some point in time have continuing education. So we've got to have some way being able to do that certification for you. Okay. So again, if you've already taken the class and you're planning on or you're ready to take the test, and now you're just, hey, all of a sudden they've changed the test on me. I want you to recognize that the amount of information that they've changed, you shouldn't have any problems whatsoever going through, even with the old class, being able to take the new test. Okay. You might see one or two that's going to be about things like AI or machine learning. And even if you don't know what they are, they should not be effective as far as you failing the CCNA. If you know everything else, you're going to be just fine. Okay. So really, like I said, they haven't really added a whole lot of much of information in this. Okay. So they show the tests in class have been updated somewhat, adding a little bit of examples and slides, kind of, like I mentioned, drive that why of what we're learning and why is it important to us? Okay, is really what I always think about. And in my opinion, one of the better things of why it is that we're taking these classes as well, right? Giving me that real world scenario of what does this really mean to me? Okay, as a person going through and taking a class itself. They also got rid of a little bit of outdated information. Excuse me. Some of the things that they've done have kind of just changed as far as what they've rebranded certain information to, certain applications, certain tools that we have available for us. So they've just gone through and updated that kind of information. Okay. They've gotten rid of some of the old Internet Explorer slides that they've got, and they've updated them with Chrome and things like that. So not that big of a deal for the most part. Okay. Like I said, if you're already certified, you're still certified. There's no problems with that whatsoever. So kind of going through and talking about some of the continuing education for this. The CCNA's always been 30 credits. Okay. It's not changing whatsoever. And you can recertify for your CCNA by getting another 30 continuing education credits as well. So if you take the class again, or if you take a new class, Like for instance, if you go through and search on Cisco's website on their continuing education, I think the Ian Clark test or class itself is something like I want to say it's 55 credits or something like that. So it's plenty to recertify for a CCNA. So any of those classes, for the most part, will give you those CCNA, and they automatically give you continuing education. You don't even have to go through and register for it anymore. It just happens automatically from Cisco. So again, that'll recertify for your CCNA. Let's see some of the technical changes. Okay. One of the big things that they added in is an introduction to the idea of AI and machine learning. Okay. So obviously, when you look at it, I want to say, hang on a second, just let me take a look at it as one. It's about 15 pages worth of information. It's really not that much of information at all. Okay. It is. Yeah. Actually, excuse me. It is 7 pages of information. Okay. So it's really not that big of a deal. Okay. That just really gets you into some terminology that they've gone through and done. Right. Like what generative adversarial networks are, variational autoencoders, large language modules, generative pre-trained transformers, GPT, right? If you're dealing with that, right? And retrieval augmented generation, RAG. So a couple of different things that they've gone through and added in there and talk about. And really what they're trying to get into is the idea of how does it work into a networking scenario? How have we added that into some of our new tools that we have to be able to do some things like traffic analytics and management of our network that we have available for us, automated configuration and management of our network settings that we have, anomaly detection, security. How can that be used with inside a firewall to be able to recognize what is our baseline, what's abnormal to our network at any point? Okay, being able to do things like predictive maintenance. How long is have our devices been up and running at any given time? Right? How old is our operating system? How close is it to being that end of life or end of sale? Okay, being able to do things like root cause analysis. So a lot of that is really just kind of helping the network administrators be able to do some kind of automated processes that we want to utilize to be just help us out. Okay, is really what we're looking for. Okay, and giving us kind of an idea of how things can change and an idea of what we might want to make as far as changes on the network. Okay, so it's a pretty small section that goes through and introduces that information. It's really just basic functions of AI and machine learning. Okay, they've added in some information about some of the rebranded tools that we have. Okay, again, going through and talking about the idea of the Catalyst Center, used to be known as DNA Center, Cisco Meraki. The Meraki dashboard is what it used to be called, right? Now, originally the Meraki dashboard was only about the concept of the wireless network, but now you can go through and control things like your 93, 94, 9500 series Catalyst switches. They've rebranded what they've done with inside it used to be known as Insight. Now it's known as Cisco Nexus Dashboard Insights. Okay, so that helps her out, dealing with the idea of the not only the Nexus switches, but the UCS devices that we have in there to be able to go through and create information about what we're doing within our virtual machines if you're using the UCSXs. Okay, the Cisco App Dynamics that we're utilizing to be able to go through and kind of recognizing third-party tool information, application programming interfaces that we're looking for. And again, kind of that concept in App Dynamics, I believe it used to be called Stealth Watch. Is what it used to be called. Okay, so being able to do some things like there's encrypted traffic analysis that they have available for us within there, being able to go through and do root cause analysis. Okay, Again, Cisco Thousand Eyes, how Thousand Eyes uses the concept of machine learning to be able to recognize the information that we have available on our network. Cisco Secure Network Analytics, okay, which used to be called V-Analytics. If you guys are used to that, used to be tie-in quite big with DNA Center, okay, to be able to go through and take all the telemetry information from all the different devices that we have and be able to come up with graphs of information that we have. And all of this is part of what they call AI ops at this point in time, okay? So it's a comprehensive tool structure that they use to not only be able to go through and manage our network and be able to recognize what's going on with our network, but be able to troubleshoot and give us information about how we should change different devices on our network at any given point, okay? They're looking at some things. They've added some new intros to a few of their modules. Again, it's more about reasons for why the topic's important is really what we're looking for. So when you look into what they've actually done for the CCNA and how they changed it, there's not a whole lot of changes by any means whatsoever. I wouldn't feel bad by any means for someone to go through if they've already taken the class, going through and taking this new test, okay? So I just want you to recognize that. Now, there's still great information. I think they've added in a few different things that used to be self-study, okay? Just giving you some ideas of what they actually did. They've gone through and originally they had taken out the idea of spanning tree, right? And in the spanning tree, they've gone through and said, hey, it was just part of the self-study information that they had. They immediately went into the idea of ether channeling in the old class. Well, now they actually go through spanning tree, and it's kind of relative, if you ask me, the idea of, and it's important to understand spanning tree on why we use things like ether channeling and link aggregation, okay? So they've gone through and kind of massaged it, if you will, okay? Some of the stuff that they still have in the self-study, layer 3 redundancy, okay? So think of things like any of your first hop redundancy protocols, right? So HSRP that we're utilizing, I think they go through some VRRP information within there, an introduction to WAN technologies, quality of service, wireless fundamentals, okay? The idea of virtualization and architectures, software-defined networking. And again, this kind of goes hand in hand with within looking at things like Cisco Catalyst Center, okay? Now, I think it's interesting to me that if you go through the sections, I'm pretty sure they still call it DNA Center in the class, but that's one of the things that they're really trying to do is to try and update some of these topics with the new rebranding naming conventions of some of these things. Okay, so again, like they've gotten rid of, it's no longer called DNA Center, it's not called Cisco Catalyst Center, right? So they've gone through and tried to rebrand that information in those self-study sections within here as well. So when you look into some of the things they have, the introduction to software-defined networking is a big environment that they're dealing with, okay? And again, going through and talking about Catalyst Center, right? What SD access and SD-WAN are all about. And again, the Meraki solution that we have, okay? So again, kind of discussing the new rebranded information that we're utilizing within here as well, okay? When I look at some of the other stuff here, hang on. They've added into that self-study sections, threat landscape, so security threat landscape and implementing threat defense technologies that they've added in. And again, those are things that have already been there. They've just kind of changed naming conventions that they're utilizing, right? The idea of utilizing App Dynamics and Thousand Eyes that we have in the Cisco Secure Network Analytics rather than calling it V-Analytics that they used to have. So it's really all about the idea of what they've done to their tools, okay, and how they've changed those and updated those to be able to support the idea of AI, okay. and artificial intelligence and machine learning. Okay. So again, it's really not a whole lot of real technical changes in this course by any means whatsoever. So I'm going to throw this out and ask in chat. Do any of you guys have any questions on what it is that they've gone through and changed in the CCNA? Or any questions you'd like answered about the CCNA? Looking at some other information, again, kind of going through the sections they have. So they discuss the idea of the functions of networking. Daniel says no questions. Thank you, Daniel. Right? They go through and they discuss in this course the for those of you guys that haven't taken it, the OSI model, why information is important for us, right? Why we recognize those different layers of the OSI model and what devices work at each location, and the introduction to the operating system, the iOS. So yeah, great question there, Ben. Ben asks, what types of questions are on the CCNA? As in, are they all multiple choice? Is there a lab portion on the test? So you will see that there are going to be a couple different types of questions. You're going to have multiple choice, right? Pick the answer A, B, C, or D, right? You'll have multiple answer where they'll say, hey, choose 3 that apply, okay? And yes, they do have the idea of what they call it. I think they call it test lits that they call it. So you're going to go in and you're going to add in information where you have to configure a router or switch, right? So their lab information that they have. So Greg says, I understand that Cisco's made a point of more directly linking each topic to exam objectives. Is that true? Absolutely, right? So, and that's really one of the things that they're really trying to do. So try and focus this class a lot more to what the exam actually is and making sure that those questions that are being asked on the exam are relative to the information that we're given in the class as well. Let's see some other things that they go through. Again, talking about the different layers of the OSI model. So again, subnetting that they go through, variable link subnet masking. They discuss the idea of the transport layer and application layer information in this class, the functions of routing and really the process of routing, right? Which a lot of people kind of misunderstand some of the ideas of that process of routing and what we have to do as a router. The concept of being able to take bits into bytes, bytes into a frame. I need to de-encapsulate the Ethernet header so I can look at an IP header. I'm going to then take the destination IP address of that IP header and compare that to what we've got in our routing table to determine an interface that is going to go out on. And then you got to recognize that the rest of that is to re-encapsulate that. So I need to put on a new Ethernet header. I need to go through and turn that frame into bytes, bytes into bits, and send it out an individual interface itself. And so, yeah, you're going to see a lot of that being discussed in this course. So they discuss the packet delivery process and the concept of the address resolution protocol. They get into the introduction of basic IPv6. And I know a lot of people that get into the CCNA, especially here in North America, really have limited exposure to IPv6. And what we're trying to do is to not necessarily say, hey, really need to focus on IPv6, but be aware about what's going on within IPv6 and how is that changing the landscape of any kind of networking out there, okay? What are we doing and how does that change application information, for instance? And that's, again, part of the beauty of the OSI model, in my opinion, right, is that you can change one layer without affecting all other layers. Right? So even though we're changing how the networking layer works, the internet layer, the TCP/IP protocol stack, it does not change the way the application layer works or the way the link layer works. Right? For the most part, they're identical. Right? What's changing is the idea of RIP addressing. Obviously, that's got to be changing. Right? How we route is going to change quite a bit. Right? How we get an IP address is changing quite a bit. So there's some things that do indeed change, but at the same time, in my opinion, IPv6 to me seems very similar to what you would see in an IPv4 environment, okay? Could you suggest any good prep material for the CCNA? Just starting my journey, looking for some beginner study guides and such. Absolutely. I would tell you there are quite a few different places. Obviously, Cisco's digital learning, taking a CCNA course from us, kind of one of the reasons we're here, right? I would say there's a company out there called Boson, Boson. Boson.com has some great information. They've got not only great test prep information, but they've also got great labs as well. So if you want to go through and do some predefined labs that they've got available for you, Cisco's got their own labs that you can go through and get from them as well. Okay, so Cisco learning labs that you can use. Let's see. I have some Cisco course books that are pre-COVID. Are those books any good to study for this? Absolutely. And again, those pre-COVID information that we've got available for us, there have been some changes to the CCNA since 2020 for sure. Okay, I think they've actually changed it twice, two major revisions since 2020. But Raphael, I would say absolutely. There's still some fundamental information within there that is great stuff that really hasn't changed much at all in the last 30 years for the most part. Okay. That initial connection and access to the command line interface. Okay. What the OSI model is, how IP addressing works. I would say they have a lot less focus on some things like subnetting now, where pre-COVID, they were really focused on subnetting. And in my opinion, kind of the wrong way to think about it, right? I would say pre-COVID, they had probably a good 40% of the CCNA exam was about subnetting and how things worked when they subnetted. And they would have you ask questions, things like go through and assign an IP address and subnet mask to an Ethernet interface. But you had to do subnetting to determine what IP address and subnet mask you should assign to that interface. Okay. So they've gone through and really kind of taken their focus away from subnetting per se and gotten more into the idea of static routes, right? The idea of VLANs and trunking, OSPF, right? And in my opinion, that's a great idea because when you look into the concept of subnetting, jump on Google and download a subnet calculator, right? There's no reason to do that by hand anymore, right? So I think that concept of what we have available for us as far as tools are concerned, and even as a CCNA, in my particular opinion, I would tell you, you're not going to be the one that comes up with your addressing plan on a network for most cases, okay? So having somebody else go through and come up with that addressing plan is typically the way it's going to be. As a CCNA and a junior admin, you're going to be more about the idea of, hey, go assign this IP address and subnet mask to that interface, right? So, and most of that's going to be cut and paste work for the most part. So yeah, I would say that book that you've got that's pre-COVID, still absolutely good information, but they have kind of refocus some of their tools, right? And they've renamed a lot of information. Okay. So when you go through and you start looking into some of the self-study stuff that they have within here, whatever book you have that's pre-COVID, I'm not sure if they're going to have things like quality of service in there. I'm not sure they're going to have information like software-defined networking and how a Catalyst Center actually works. Okay. What SD access and SD-WAN are going to be. Okay. So those are some things that I would kind of look into that may not be in that book. Okay. But absolutely, it's still good study material. Let's see some other things that they go through. The threat landscape, the security threat landscape is just kind of recognizing some of the possibilities of threats that we have available for us, right? Not only what your risk is and how to do some risk assessment, but then noticing things like, are we vulnerable to a particular threat that's out there? Are we susceptible to someone going through and exploiting that particular threat? And then the implementing threat defense is all about the idea of mitigating that. Okay. How do we reduce our risk on the network? And notice that I say mitigating. I'm not saying completely eliminate, because the idea of completely eliminating threats, well, that's not going to happen unless you just disconnect everything. The moment you connect your network and turn it on, there's security holes in there, right? So our goal is to diminish the effect that could be happening there and the risk that we potentially have, right? But we've got to allow traffic through our network. And that's one of the things, as you start to allow traffic, you're getting less and less secure at any given point. Okay. So yeah, I would say for the most part in this, and I would say maybe if you told me that there was 10% as a change to this particular class, I would say that you're probably a little high. Okay. I would say for the most part, probably maybe 5 or 6% of new information that they've added to this particular class. Okay. From the old class, which was in August. Okay. I think they switched it. I taught it for the first time last week. Okay. So really not a whole lot has really been changed. Is there cross-reference as far as a listing of what has been added so they can make sure to also review it? Also, how about a Cisco brand simulator? Have some vintage. Okay, so absolutely. Again, when you talk about like a simulator type, even if you have some vintage simulator, most of what we're doing in here is it's going to be just fine for you, right? Now, that's not to say that there's some in here that they don't necessarily have labs on. Like for instance, the AI and machine learning that they've got in here, right? There's no lab for it whatsoever. It's just terminology, giving you kind of an idea of how we use that in a networking environment, right? So can you look at a listing? Absolutely. Jump on Cisco's website and type in CCNA 2.1. Okay. It'll give you a learning path on some of the new content that's been added in. Okay. So yeah, there's absolutely some changes that you could take in there, Raphael, to be able to come up with that. But I would say as far as simulators are concerned, most of the labs are the exact same. Okay. I don't think they've made a change to a single one of the labs other than going through and adding in a couple of things such as asking for spanning tree. I think they do a couple of spanning tree. And are there command scenarios on the test? Absolutely, they are, Deepak. Okay, so you're going to see on there where you actually got to go through a login to a Cisco switch or a Cisco router and make a change. Okay, usually you have 2 of those simulation questions that are on that test. So definitely going to be in that. And Raphael, no problems. That's what I'm here for. Okay, trying to help you guys out as much as possible on this. And like I said, I think that this is a very good exam. There's a lot of information in this exam. I typically recommend to people that if you're planning on taking the CCNA, I like the idea of taking the CCNA class or going through all the information. I would totally recommend that you also take the EN core class as well. Okay. The reason I say that before you actually take the exam for it is that the EN core class actually covers a lot of what they talk about in the self-study portion of the CCNA as well. Okay. So it adds in some great information, a little bit more in depth to go through some of the topics that are covered in the CCNA as well. Okay. So it gives you kind of that fundamental grounding of taking the CCNA and then giving a little bit more in depth to be able to answer and feel real comfortable about answering all the other questions that you may or may not have when it comes to the CCNA class itself. So just as I keep on going, I want to make sure no one just drops off here. Okay. We've got a couple of promotions within here as well. Okay. So just let me throw in this and I'll keep on answering questions. But if you register for the CCNA course, by the end of the year, you get an exam voucher for free. And they show us a couple of guaranteed run dates that we have available for us. September 30th, October 21st, November 18th, December 2nd, and December 16th. Okay. So we're going to have plenty of different guaranteed to run dates that are coming up before. And again, all you have to do is register for a CCNA course. You don't necessarily have to take it by the end of the year, although I would say probably a good idea too, but
And I will share in the chat our URL course too.
absolutely. Yep. Learning network sites. Let's Cisco modeling. Yep. Cisco modeling labs are great information there. Brandon, Brandon threw out a link to everybody here of a Cisco learning network store that you have. And you could get information within here at the Cisco modeling labs. Okay. Notice it costs about $200. They allow you to prepare for different certifications. And that's not just for the CCNA. Okay. You can go through and use that for CCNP, CCIE study even. Okay. So some great information that they got for Cisco modeling labs. And what's really nice about those modeling labs there, Brennan, is that you not only get the idea of being able to do the labs and themselves, but it's not just a, hey, let's throw this out and have you guys kind of sink or swim, right? They give you this idea of, hey, this is what we're trying to get done. Here are the steps to get those things done as well, right? So step-by-step directions for those labs. Love it, okay? For any of the rest of you guys, I would say there's a company out there called GNS3, okay? GNS3 gives us some great labs. Now, you can do pretty much anything you want to within those labs, okay? And that allows you to go through and kind of drag and drop user or routers and switches, put them where you need to, put in virtual machines for it. So it's kind of a little bit different because it's more freeform, right? There is no, hey, here's a step-by-step lab. You have to go through and configure it on your own and get that information to work. I mentioned the idea of Boson. Boson has some great labs available, and those are more of a step-by-step directions to go through and get things done as well, okay? If you take the CCNA course, you get labs that are not only used in the course, but you also have those for an extra up to 90 days past that, the class time as well, okay? So some great labs that you guys can go through and look at to be able to deal with the CCNA. I'm just trying to see if anybody else has any more questions. So then for the most part, that's pretty much what I got for you, unless you guys have any other questions for what may or may not be changed in there. I said, I think that this class is very good as far as giving you information, getting some of the other topics that they go through, basics of an access control list. We'll see a lot of information as far as how can I access the free voucher. So if you've gone through and you've registered for a CCNA course from Sunset Learning, we'll get you your free voucher whenever you're ready to take the test. Okay. So when you're ready to take the test, I'm sorry, go ahead. Say that again, Carol.
We will send by email.
Yep. And Alvin, just to let you know, the concept of it, we don't give it to you guys when you take the test because they expire in 6 months. So we'd rather wait until you're ready to go through and take the test and you want to go through and register for that exam, and then we'll give you that voucher. If they expire on us, no problems to you, okay? So that way we can always make sure that your voucher is not expired and that you can always take your test. So whenever you're ready to take the exam and register for that exam, we'll send you, it's just a voucher number via email that you have to put in there. You put in that voucher when you register for the test and you're good to go. So usually that's either Mina or Pam that will send that information out from Sunset Learning, but you have to register from Sunset Learning for the course. And you can do that via Sunset Learning's website and go to sunsetlearning.com. And then other than that, just want to thank you guys for showing up. I hope this helped. And I hope you guys will come back for another tech talk that we have available for us. And hopefully I see you in the CCNA class.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.